in my chair. I mean, I'm squeezed in my chair. And I'm thinking, what is this? Realized Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Alice Paul, Sojourner Truth, all of them, they were on the chair right. So when I first went to my first meeting as representing, as a leader, I went to my first meeting to the White House. I wasn't apprehensive about it because I'm an intelligence person more than anybody else in the history of the Congress. I've been there on intelligence matters. I'm an appropriator. I was a leader on the Appropriations Committee. And so I just didn't even think about it. I'm going to the White House for a meeting. Well, when I went to the meeting, and the door closed behind me, I realized that this was unlike any other meeting I had ever been to in the White House. In fact, it was unlike any meeting that any woman had ever been to in the White House. Very small meeting, the President of the United States and Vice President, and then the House and Senate, Democratic and Republican leaders. Just small, maybe 10 people at most around the table. And I thought, oh my, because here I was. Now, women sit at the cabinet table, yes, appointed by the president, whose vote counts more than anybody else's at the table. But I was coming, elected by my colleagues, first branch of government, the legislative branch, Article 1. So the first time, so I sit down, President Bush, as gracious as he could ever be, George W. Bush, welcoming and this or that, lovely. And while he was talking about, oh yeah, I'm sure we're going to hear some things we haven't heard before, you know, you can just imagine. No, but he's lovely and gracious. The Bush is always that. So I sit down, and as he's being so gracious and welcoming, I feel really squeezed in my chair. I mean, I'm squeezed in my chair. And I'm thinking, what is this? Realized Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Alice Paul, Sojourner Truth, all of them, they were on the chair right there with me. They were right there. I've never had that experience before or since. They were right there on the chair. And I could hear them say, at last, we have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you.
And then they were gone. And then I could pay attention to the president. And then they were gone. And my first thought was, we want more. We want more. But just a reminder of the shoulders that all of us stand on and those who stand on our shoulders as well. W. Bush, he was very gracious, he always is, and was saying something to the effect of, we're so glad to welcome you here, congratulations, and I know that you'll probably have some different things to say about what's going on, which is correct. But as he was saying this, he was stating, and this other thing was happening to me. Peg has heard this story so many times. My chair was getting crowded in. I swear this happened, never happened before, never happened since. My chair was getting crowded in, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was like this. And then I realized Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Alice Paul, Sojourner Truth, you name it, they were all on that chair. All of them. More than I knew. And then I could hear them say, at last, we have a seat at the table. And then they were gone. And my first thought, as Peg had trained me to think, we want more.
Bush, very gracious man, welcomed me and very graciously to the table the first time. So when I walked in, though, I realized that this meeting was unlike any meeting I had ever attended at the White House. In fact, it was unlike any meeting any woman had ever attended at the White House, because I was walking in, elected by my colleagues to represent the first branch of government, the legislative branch, Article 1, at that table with the president. I was not there by his appointment, however wonderful that is to having a presidential appointment. I was there at the election of my peers. And as he was graciously welcoming us, as I mentioned, I felt really crowded on my chair. It was packed, it was crowded, I was squeezed in. I never had that feeling before. And then all of a sudden I realized that sitting on that chair with me in that room were all the suffragettes, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, you name it, they were all there. I think even Sister Julie Béliard probably was sitting there too. Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, Alice Paul, they were all on that chair with me. It was very tight. And I could hear them say, "At last, we have a seat at the table."
I realized that this was unlike any meeting I had ever been before at the White House. In fact, it was unlike any meeting that any woman had ever been to at the White House. Because I went there, not as a president's appointee at the table, a cabinet member, however wonderful that is, but I went there as a representative of a separate branch of government, as a leader from the House of Representatives. President Bush, ever gracious, welcoming me there, saying, "We look forward to what you have to say. It'll probably be different from what we've heard before here." But just as he started to lay out his legislative agenda, I felt very closed in my chair. Very closed in. It was like everybody was sitting on the chair with me. It was very tight. And I realized, and I swear that this happened, and it's never happened before or since, that sitting on that chair with me was Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Alice, Sojourner Truth, and all the people who had worked so hard for women to have the right to vote and be empowered in any way that they wanted to gain power. They're all sitting there on the chair with me now. And then I hear them say, "At last, we have a seat at the table."
I wish there was a political party I could vote for with a brain.
Or courage.
Or a heart.
I don't care about political parties. I just want a home that isn't blown away by debt. Oh, Toto.
I'll put you in debt for generations.
Oh, that's not it at all, Toto. Not at all.
Hello, my pretty! I will save you from those evil Republicans. I want those most of all. Now fly! 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 $18,000 a month for my downtown office, and then go into massive debt for Wall Street bailouts. And here are my monkeys to make you pay for it all.
Step back, everyone.
Oh, I melting.
Thank you for saving us. Who are you?
I'm John Dennis. I'm running for Congress. I believe in following the Constitution, and I believe in reducing debt, and I believe it's time to throw a little water on politicians who say one thing and do another. like Nancy Pelosi.
We're home, Toto, we're home.
I'm talking to you, young people. You, pay attention. The biggest threat to our democracy is when young people think that it's not about me. I'm just going to look at my phone.
It's Nancy Pelosi versus the Catholic Church.
At what point does a baby get human rights, in your view?
Well, I think that whether you're looking at it from a theological perspective or a scientific perspective, answering that question with specificity, is above my pay grade.
If he were to come to you and say, help me out here, Madam Speaker, when does life begin? What would you tell him?
I would say that as an ardent practicing Catholic, this is an issue that I have studied for a long time. And what I know is over the centuries, the doctors of the Church have not been able to make that definition. St. Augustine said at 3 months. You don't know. The point is that it shouldn't have an impact on a woman's right to choose. The point is that it shouldn't have an impact on a woman's right to choose. Roe v. Wade talks about very clear definitions of when the child, first trimester. Roe v. Wade talks about very clear definitions of when the child, first trimester. This is an issue that I have studied for a long time. As I say, the Catholic Church for centuries has been discussing this, and there are those who've decided.
The Catholic Church at the moment feels very strongly that it begins at the point of conception.
And this is like maybe 50 years or something like that. And we want abortions to be safe, rare. And we want abortions to be safe, rare. We want to reduce the number of abortions. So we have to take, we have to handle this as respectfully. This is sacred ground.
From the very beginning, first century on, the Church has said, you can't take an unborn life.
What she said was scandalous. It can lead other people into error. And so we have a duty to correct it.
10 Catholic Republican House members also quickly responded, writing, quote, "We hope that you will rectify your errant claims and apologize for misrepresenting the Church's doctrine and misleading fellow Catholics." One member who signed on to the letter says if Pelosi isn't willing to honor the Church's fundamental teachings over her own interpretations, she's free to join another faith.
The reality is, she made an erroneous statement about a church teaching that further shows the trouble that people have with the schizophrenic separation of their personal private beliefs in the Catholic Church and their public actions supporting things such as partial birth abortion. It's unsustainable, it's illogical.